In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Richard Stayman is going to drop off his Portsmouth Invitational preview. So find out who are the top sleepers that can make some noise in Portsmouth. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board. And my co-host for today is Richard Stayman, Mr. Mavs Draft. It's his time of year to shine because he really loves the under-the-radar prospects, the guys that nobody's really talking about. And that is why he is headed to Portsmouth. He was nice enough to do this podcast right before he catches flight to the PIT. So just to get started, the NBA season is over. You're known as Mavs Draft, but you're also a big Orlando Magic supporter. Just give me some predictions.
I don't think their game translates that well, the Magic, to the playoffs, just because they don't have any shooting. And when that happens and the court shrinks, it's tough. Paolo's still going to look good, I think, but I think people are going to have to temper their expectations because even in 2007-06, Dwight Howard looked really rough in his first playoffs. Kind of similar reasons. I think people have to kind of be calm and just be happy to be there.
They're facing Cleveland, right?
Yep.
I think there's a chance. It's just
Donovan Mitchell. I think when you got the best player in the series, it's tough.
Yeah, that's true. Only thing I don't like is that I haven't seen the schedule yet, but I know that's going to be like the series where the first game is like 1 o'clock on NBA TV.
Oh, every game's going to be NBA TV, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Paolo. I mean, I'm a big Banchero fan. Just would love to see him get some nationally televised games. And then the Mavs Clippers.
I have big hopes for the Mavs. I'm pretty confident this is the year. You know, great players, they exercise their demons, they get past them. Jordan got past the Pistons, right? Really the only one I feel like, and this guy wasn't even necessarily a great player considering who he was playing. The only one I feel like where they met all the time in the first round where they never got past him was like Gilbert Arenas and the Cavs. Like that's the only one I can think of. Guys eventually win, and I think this is the year the Mavs finally beat the Clippers.
Talk about tough situation, man. Whoever loses this series it's a tough situation. I would say even especially for the Clippers with Paul George being a free agent, Harden being a free agent, you have the new arena. At some point you're gonna say, all right, this group just isn't working. But anyway, we are here to talk about the Portsmouth Invitational. How many years is this for you as far as attending the PIT?
This is my second. So I went in 2022, couldn't make it last year. And as soon as I saw the dates and was able to make it, I was on my way back. I love this event.
See, I haven't made it out there. I know when I do like my budget as far as events I'm gonna scout, it costs the same amount of money to go to Paris than it does to go to the PIT. So I've been choosing Paris every year, but one year I'm going to make it. I'm going to make. All right. So let's talk about guys that are playing in the PIT, which if you're not familiar, the Portsmouth Invitational it's been around forever since I can remember. I guess it is the marquee event for underrated, under the radar senior prospects to play in front of NBA teams. It's cool because they have like local sponsors. The guys are wearing jerseys of some local Bob's Hardware store or something like that. And I hear it's just a really good event as far as networking and getting a chance to like see some guys that were maybe mid-major stars or second or third options on their college teams playing for an NBA scouts and get an opportunity to compete for now, which is the G League camp at the NBA Combine. And even some guys can get Exhibit 10s. And so who's like the guy that stands out to you the most as the top player in the PIT that you think has a chance to make an NBA roster?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this. So while neither of these guys are my top rated players, my top rated player is a guard. I think it's just the hardest one you have to really differentiate yourself at guard, and I don't think this player does enough here. So actually, I'm going to go with one of the wings, and that's Isaiah Crawford, who's the youngest player in the tournament. We've talked about him, I feel like,
Yeah.
plenty in this podcast, but we've been leading up to this exact moment. And then also Riley Minix at Morehead State. I feel like he is somebody who, for those who don't know, he just transferred into Morehead State this last year. I think this is his first year of D1 basketball, 6'7" ish. He rebounds the hell out of the ball. He shoots. He does a lot of different things. He's going to find his way on a floor to minimize role, I think. So one of those two guys, they're very similar and they do so much. But how it scales down, I think, is very favorable to them.
Yeah, Isaiah actually could have another year of college if he wanted to, because I know he got injured early. So he has like a redshirt year, COVID year. Seems like he's been in school for a while, but he's very, very young considering his experience. For those that aren't familiar with this game, just give them a brief summary of like his strengths and what he brings to the table and why you think he could be an Exhibit 10 guy.
Yeah, so with Isaiah Crawford, I think he reminds me a lot of almost like a baby Kawhi in some different ways, like in terms of just that archetype. He does a lot of different things, right? You got the defense. He's very versatile on that end. And like you said, he did have a knee injury for a while that lingered around and it made him look a little bit stiff. In his freshman year and really the last 2 years, that has not been the case. Like he really does look mobile on the perimeter. He can guard almost anybody. He has super long arms, so he can defend near the rim as well. And he's grown so much as a shooter. So I think at a minimum, while he also is a good passer, I think he really profiles well as a 3-and-D wing. You look at these mid-major guys who eventually come into the league as 3-and-D guys. Robert Covington, for example. Robert Covington was a superstar at I want to say it's Tennessee State. I think it was Tennessee State, not Tech,
Yeah.
but whichever one he was at, he did everything, like almost 20 points a game, 7+ rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block. And the stats aren't that far off for Isaiah Crawford. So if you look at that, maybe he could really grow into that 3-and-D mold.
Yeah, I was working in the D League at the time it was called when Covington was coming up the ranks, and I can't say I saw like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna play. I mean, he's got to be close to like year 10, but you saw that he just had a skill set. He was like a wing shot blocker, a guy that has value. And it was like right when the 3-and-D archetype was just becoming more and more popular, and he was one of the guys in the D League that stood out to me at that time that was able to make a good career. Name another player that you think has a chance to really shine and stand out this weekend or this week.
Yeah, yeah. So on top of Crawford, like I said, I really do like Riley Minix as well. He's a little bit older. He's almost going to be 24 at the time of the draft, and he's out of Morehead State. But if I had to go with like a third player, I really do like, this is the guard that I was bringing up. I do like Boogie Ellis. Like I really think he got a bad hand dealt to him, especially his senior year at USC. You look at the other years when they were better at USC that he was there. I like his game. He can play off the ball. I think he was extremely mature to accept Isaiah Collier, Bronny taking over the guard spots, like as the hype men kind of thing. Like he was completely overlooked. It didn't really get to his ego when I watched the games. It seemed like he was still playing like I'm okay taking the backseat to you. I understand why. But still also being aggressive. Like there's a fine line to draw there. And I
Oh,
think
he
he
was
did.
aggressive. He's always going to be aggressive. You take that
Yeah,
away from him, then he's not Boogie.
yeah, exactly. So I think he did a really good job of balancing that. So for me, I like his game. Again, he's a guard. It's tough to differentiate himself there.
Yep. I wanted to ask you about Aaron Estrada. I liked him when he was at Hofstra. He's
Yeah.
went to quite a few schools, if I'm not mistaken. It was somewhere out east, and he went to Oregon, then Hofstra, then Alabama. I like him as a shot creator. He's creative with the ball, and I'm a big fan of offensive creativity, guys that can get it done off the dribble. What are your thoughts on Estrada?
Yeah, I actually wasn't super impressed with his game at Alabama. Like he did a decent amount. Maybe it was the sharing the ball with Mark Sears that kind of, is a little bit tough. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this is a really good area for him to make up for that and go, okay, what I did at Hofstra wasn't fake. because he, like you said, he can do a lot of different things. Like he creates for others, he creates for himself off the dribble. He's a good decision maker off the dribble, which is far and away, I think, one of the most important things that you can have as a guard. I think this is a really good area for him to shine. So I'm excited to see him.
Yep. All right. When we return, we're going to talk about a few more prospects that Richard thinks can shine at the Portsmouth Invitational. But let's talk about Nissan because I have a question for you. I want to know, are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Do you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Where our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to turn your adventure into next level fun. And the first car I want to talk about is the Nissan Rogue, which is perfect for city drives and great escapes. They have class executive Google built in, which is always updating your assistant to call for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. They have the Google Assistant, which has Google Maps in the Google Play Store, which is built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. And the 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. And then there's the Nissan Pathfinder, which has room up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. It also has 284 horsepower and can tow up to 6,000 pounds. And when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So you can take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. I want to know, are you competitive, Richard? I mean, I've played basketball with you, so you are pretty competitive.
I mean, I like to think so.
Well, if you have a competitive side, you should check out Monopoly Go. I'm sure you heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, and it is a great twist on Monopoly where you can play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that can bring you money. And the best part is you can play with your friends, you can play with your family, you can charge them rent on your iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly. But now you can also rob their vaults of riches, which is crazy. And the leaderboards can show you who has the biggest Monopoly earnings, who's the biggest Monopoly tycoon. And it's not just the competitive side that will draw you in. You could team up with your friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go, which is now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, second segment. We talked about Aaron Estrada. We talked about Riley Minutes and Isaiah Crawford. Who is another player that you think has a chance to stand out in Portsmouth?
Yeah, I like Quincy Olivari at Xavier. I think
Yep.
he's somebody who I'd seen him at Rice the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like his game. I think he's a beautiful scorer. He's very confident in his shot too. And I think that shows just on the floor, like when you're watching him. So I'm excited to see him with NBA spacing, NBA pace. And if they're playing fast at any point and he starts lighting it up, like that's a huge shock racer for him.
What do you think is his NBA fit or like the skill set that he can hang his hat on?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the shooting, which is tough because when you're 6'3", like I feel like when I watched him, I thought he was a good 6'4", 6'5". Like this is just on film. Like he's probably one of the tallest looking 6'3" guys I've ever seen on tape. And then you look at it and you're like, wait, he's really only 6'3". So I'm really interested to see what they show as his wingspan. Because at Portsmouth, they do the same measurements that they do at the combine with wingspan, hand size, all the measurables. So if he has long arms, I do think that'll help him a lot. He's gonna have to play some tough defense to utilize that. But if he's got long arms and he lights it up, that's a huge shock racer for him.
Our guy's gonna grow this week, like we saw at the Nike Hoop Summit. It seems like multiple players grew 2 inches through the week.
We'll see how they measure without shoes first.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. All right, another player that's you think has a chance to make a name for himself.
I think this is one of the most unique players, and I got to get his name right here. It's Darious Woolbright. He's at Western Carolina. I am
I'm gonna
super
cut you off for a second. There's
yeah,
not a more unique player in college basketball
yeah.
than Darius Woolbright. I I mean, I'll let you go, but I've had like G League GMs call me and ask me about him, and they're like, I like this guy. Like, and then there's some people that are like, it's not gonna translate. He doesn't do this. But I'll let you go and talk about him, and I add my 2 cents in.
No, so for those who don't know, his stat like at Western Carolina, first of all, he went to JUCO for the first 2 years, so he's a fifth year senior. But the stat line is unreal. 21 points a game, 5.5 assists. It's kind of weird. He didn't block a shot this year. And he's barely blocked any shots and also hasn't really recorded any steals, but 12 rebounds a game, 46% shooting, doesn't really shoot. But this year he grew a lot in the free throw line, 8 free throws a game and 72%. So there might be some shooting hope that's giving teams hope at least. But he is so unique on offense. At 6'5", he does all like I don't really know how to describe his game even. Like he's very unique. But I want to see him in this NBA environment where he's almost forced to shoot threes and also has to play faster tempo, better spacing, has to play harder defense. What does that look like?
Yeah, like when you look at his numbers, you see like 21 and 12, and you're like, okay, this is a big. Then you look and you're like, wait a minute, he's 6'6". He's playing point guard. I like him a lot. He's a lefty, and this is just my notes I have. Lefty, unselfish, prefers to get downhill. I think he's a natural distributor. I think he has the feel of a guy that is best with the ball in his hands. And so with his lack of shooting, it kind of makes it hard because he's a reluctant shooter. But what makes it interesting is, and you mentioned like the pace of the game, he plays slow. He's not like a gifted athlete. He's not blowing by guys. So it's like, how are you getting to the rim and you're doing most of your damage in the paint when you're not just blowing by guys? It's very unique and crafty. He's not like an explosive leaper, doesn't have like great vertical pop, doesn't seem to turn the corner against defenders. But then somehow you look up and I mean he's just getting to his spots with bully ball. He's a crafty one-on-one scorer. And one of the things that I have in my notes that stood out to me is that, and I don't think I've ever written this about anybody, he gets to his spots without speed. Like, how is that possible?
It's all up here. Like with him, it is all up here. He gets it.
Yeah, he's unique. I'm gonna pull up this text I got from a general manager of a G League team that was asking me about him. Oh yeah, so basically he's just like, I think at this point he was averaging, he had a game where he had 18, 13, and 11 in front of the scout. And so he's asking me my opinion about him. And he was just like, hey man, when you have 13, he had 13 double straight at the time. And he's like, he's tough. And then he was just asking me how many Power Five schools that he played. But he said, I'm looking for sleepers. And he says he doesn't shoot threes, but I'm rolling with everything else. How do you think his game can translate to the G League and then possibly scale to the NBA, like best case scenario? And that's the hard part.
I have no idea. That's the scariest thing. I think he gets drafted the right fit somewhere that's really developing him just to be that connective piece and somehow works, right? Like you put Oso Ighodaro down half a foot and maybe hope that's what happens. Like it's such a weird. I like you said, it's unique. Weird is the wrong word. He's one of the most unique players I've ever seen come through college basketball because everything says don't like this kid because he doesn't produce defensive stats. He's not that athletic. He doesn't really shoot, but like he just gets results. And sometimes like I'm very much the process over results and but like sometimes you just got to trust where the outcomes are right. Like that's to me the hard thing is if he can play fast here and thrive, like he's 100%. I think he gets a G League elite camp. Like if
Yeah,
he's
and
on that first team,
that's what I'm trying to figure out with him, right? So for those that aren't aware how these combines work, there's usually some type of athletic testing, right? So he's probably not gonna, I don't even want to say probably. I don't think he's going to stand out in like the athleticism drills. And then in the shooting drills, I can't see him like making a lot of noise there because he's such a reluctant shooter. So he's the type of player that I think that if NBA teams are seeing him for the first time. So I mean, you got your scouts that scout your mid-major conferences and so on. But if there's like some key decision makers there, they're probably going to watch him during the athletic testing and drills part of like the combine and not be impressed or not stand out. But then when it's 5-on-5 play, he's gonna make some noise. The only player that I can think of that is similar to him as far as being like crazy unique in the past few years was Darion Sebron. But Sebron had a lightning quick first step and was an NBA level athlete. But he had games where he had like 18 rebounds and he could handle the ball and play as a like decision maker. But he was very unique in the sense that he was, I can't remember his measurements, but he was like what, 6'5", like real thin, but
Yeah.
just like collected a lot of rebounds just off of having like an incredible nose for the basketball. Woolbright is a little different. He's stronger and he's also a good rebounder, but he doesn't have the same level of athleticism. So he's a very, very unique prospect. And I like guys that are like extremely unique. I'm still torn on like what happens with him because he's just such a different prospect.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see him again. This NBA environment, like they have the NBA three-point line, obviously, like it's at a random high school gym, but they got every single thing for him, and I'm really excited to see how one he measures and two just how he looks again. NBA tempo, NBA talent around him, all that stuff. It's going to be wonderful. Like he's going to be the most. I think he's going to be one of the most, if not the very most, sought after player. Like everybody's going to go, okay, he's the one player. If I can only see one game, I'm going to him. Like if that's what the GMs and executives that are there saying, like of any one player, I think it's him.
I can see that. All right, we have one more segment left, and we're going to find out who are the next couple sleepers that Richard is looking forward to seeing in Portsmouth. But let's talk about eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience, that is the formula for winning championships. And it is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They have over 122 million parts to choose from, so you'll always find exactly what you are looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you will get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers. And let's talk about the Locked On NFL Mock Draft live on April 17th, today at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is streaming on Locked On Sports Today, which is the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week streaming channel on YouTube. You can find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 Eastern to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th at 7 Eastern, again, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today, the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week streaming channel on YouTube, or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, last segment. Let's see if we can squeeze 3 more names out. Who is another player that you are looking forward to seeing?
So I'm just gonna do a 2-for-1 here. There are 2 connective pieces that do a lot on the basketball floor, one in a very high mid-major, the other in a low mid-major. First one is Kevin Cross at Tulane. Big fan of his game. He's also one of my highest ranked players that I completely glossed over.
Yep.
Absolute connective piece. Just does a lot of different things on both ends of the floor. He kind of needs to, the jump shot's my big question. And then Drew Pember at UNC Asheville. He's somebody that, first of all, he started his career at Tennessee, but he's been on the radar for a while because I mean, his first year at UNC Asheville, 3 blocks a game, 15 points a game. But this year, the last 2 years, I think he's been draft ready, 21 points a game, 3.5 assists, a lot of rebounds, 1 block, or excuse me, 2 blocks, 1 steal. Like he is one of those statistical guys like that just does every little thing. And I think both of those guys do have clear NBA roles, Kevin Cross and Drew Pember, in being connective roles.
Yeah, Kevin Cross is a guy that caught my attention last year. That Tulane team is really talented.
Yeah, they were
I
the
just
they were the worst, most talented team I've ever seen
yeah, when I look at
outside of you.
Tulane's team, I don't understand why they couldn't be like New Mexico. Like New Mexico has some guys that are like, all right, this is a team that has three guys that I think are at least G League players at the minimum. And the Tulane team had multiple guys. But Cross, yeah, like I said, he caught my attention last year. Very intriguing prospect. Shout out to Drew and One Motive Sports because they are, to me, one of the best, if not the best, at just finding these hidden gems. I mean, Trey Jimerson is a guy that didn't average a double double last year in college. Goes to Portsmouth, and I mean, I don't know how many games he started for the Grizzlies, but he was a starting center. Like, how do you go from like not averaging a double double or double figures in college to playing multiple games, starting multiple games for the Grizzlies? I mean, obviously it was a unique situation with all the injuries, but that's just a testament to their eye for talent. And Kevin Cross is a guy that I think is going to have a legitimate chance to earn a two-way contract.
Yeah,
And
amen
then
to all of that.
yeah, he's really good. And then Drew is he's kind of been on radars for a little while now. I was actually shocked that he didn't go to like a power five for this particular season. I thought he had some NBA draft buzz last year. And usually if you're like at a mid-major school and you have some draft buzz, the next step for you is to like go to a power five, or for him go back to a power five school. I mean, I guess Dylan Jones didn't do it, but for the most part, you're seeing most guys try to, especially with the NIL, and they're paying so much money. But he's definitely someone that I can see at the very minimum getting an Exhibit 10 contract.
Yeah, I really like his game. I think he's a lock for an E10, but this is an area where he could, again, another guy who could really elevate himself to the G League elite camp.
Okay. All right. One more prospect.
Okay, this is tough because I had like, so obviously you had said three, and I was like, oh man, I am
Oh,
panicking.
if you
I'm
have
just gonna
more.
I'm gonna group basically there's just three shooters that I really
Okay.
like. I think the shooting in this group is honestly really impressive. I'm not even gonna name everybody I like because there are so many different names that I haven't gotten to, but there are three shooters that I haven't brought up yet. So there's Clarence Daniels at New Hampshire. There is I just lost him. There was Marcus Domask at Illinois.
Yeah.
And there is Jamison Battle. That was the other one at Ohio State. I think all three of those guys are super underrated because they also have that one other skill that they do. And also, if you really want a sleeper, this guy, pure shooter, but he's 6'7", Kyle Road at Liberty. That guy is going to have a lot of eyes on him.
Okay. All right. So, like when you look at like this PIT and
Mhm.
you look at like the rosters, what do you think the NBA teams like are going to be looking for as far as like the players?
I think one of two things, like in events like these, a lot of this gets lost the most, I think. And that is that yes, it's about you individually, but also how do you make everybody else better? Because a lot of these guys are going to end up finding themselves going, okay, I have to stand out. I have to stand out. There's pressure because nobody's watching me all year on TV. I have to stand out in front of these scouts. And because of that, they make themselves worse. It's going to be the guys who I think that how composed can they stay? Do they win? Do they like winning doesn't really matter, but like if they're making their teammates better and that's why they're winning, that's going to stand out while also getting their own stats. Those are going to be the guys to pop. So I think they're going to be looking at guys who, may not have the best roster fit next to them, but also some guys who didn't get a good roster around them and didn't get the right roster to capitalize their talent. And if there's any shade of that, I think they're going to get a really good chance to showcase that.
Yep, I agree. And I've done this NTX Combine the last couple years, and the NTX Combine is very similar to the Portsmouth Invitational. And one of the things that it happened with a player last year that I think is so important that NBA teams look for in settings like this is who is a great teammate. Because whoever comes out of this group, at best, in most cases, at best, they're going to be 15th, 16th, 17th man on an NBA roster. They're not going to play a lot. And there was a guy last year that came to our NTX Combine who just had great energy. I mean, he was clapping for everybody. He high-fived everybody. All he did was just, I mean, you would have thought that he knew all these players because this is a collection of guys that have never met each other, probably never even heard of each other until they start looking at the rosters and seeing who they're going against. But this guy came in, even though he was competitive, he treated everybody like it was his best friend. And he ended up getting a roster spot in the G League. And I think his personality is what like put him over the top and separate it, because the way I look at it as an NBA team, if there's a guy that's coming out of this camp and like I said, if he does get an Exhibit 10, if he does get a two-way, the chances of him playing a significant role in the NBA are small. But if he shows that he can be a great teammate, those are the guys that you want to fill the back end of your roster with, because you don't want somebody on your back end of your roster that's going to be pouting and like mad that they're not playing or not active in huddles. And so I think that is something that NBA teams are looking for when they come to these showcase events like this.
Yeah, completely agree.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Richard has to go. He has a flight to catch. And then I'm sure we will hear more from him about who stood out and who shined in Portsmouth. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, and we are out of here.